Hi, welcome back to Kalike. We are here with yet another episode or yet another session on electrostatics. In my previous session, we spoke about charging by induction. We understood how the fundamental properties of charges that we learned in the beginning of the session when I started electrostatic play a vital role in understanding the whole field of electrostatics. So we'll continue with the same understanding of the very fundamental properties of electrostatics and lay the foundation for the bigger things that you're going to learn in this chapter. So before I take up the derivations that you come across in electrostatics, especially on something like electric potential and electric dipole, it is essential that you need to understand that these properties which of charges, the basic properties like repulsion of like charges and attraction of unlike charges, lays the foundation for most of the understandings that you come across in electrostatics. So if you understand all these at a subatomic level, as I always say, solving numericals really feels a piece of cake. So continuing with that, we'll actually speak about distribution of charges along a thin wire, a string metal wire, or along a surface area or along a spherical surface of certain volume. Now again, before I jump on and just go on writing the formulae and tell you what we are really doing, it is essential we go back to our fundamentals, understand various methods of charging, and understand the properties of like charges repelling each other and unlike charges attracting each other. How does this actually play a crucial role in understanding a lot of phenomena in electrostatics? Okay, so previous class I spoke in very much detail about charging by induction. So this class we'll speak a lot about or understand a lot about how do you charge a particular conductor which is electrically neutral, both by the method of friction and also by the method of conduction. So we'll take up friction first. We'll discuss in very much detail. Please pay attention. It is really essential that you understand all this so that you understand the next part of it where I not only talk about a certain point charge, whereas I talk about distribution of charges along a particular surface. Okay, so let's get started. Charging by friction. So how do you charge an object by friction? Now this might feel very fundamental to you. Yes, of course it is very fundamental, but have you really understood it the right way? That is very important. We all know, we always speak about examples, and you might have even tried at home where you take a balloon, and if you have your hairs dry, you take a balloon, you rub it hard against your dry hair, and then you take that balloon, stick it against the wall. You see that the balloon tends to get stuck onto the wall. That is because you have charged the balloon, you have transferred some electrons to the balloon, so the balloon will be electrically it will be negatively charged particle now. So when you take it closer to the wall being electrically neutral, the balloon having an excess of electrons will tend to attract the positively charged particles, positively charged nucleus towards the balloon, and then it gets stuck to the wall, right? The another example that we always speak about is taking a comb, right? A comb is electrically neutral. It will, before you start rubbing it against the hair, you see that it definitely has equal number of electrons and equal number of positively charged particles, hence it is electrically neutral. Now on the other hair, your dry hair definitely has some excess of electrons which are trying to jump off your hair, right? But they can't jump off your hair because you are surrounded with atmosphere. There is air everywhere, and dry air, as you know, it's basically an insulator, or the air surrounding you is an insulator. So it doesn't allow free passage of electrons. So the electrons are waiting to jump somewhere, wherever it's made up of these free electrons. So when you take a comb and you start rubbing it against, so this action of rubbing against each other when you try to comb yourself is what we call friction. So what are we doing? We are rubbing each of the hair with the comb together. So the excess electrons which are there, which have been wanting to jump, they jump on the comb. So what happened now in the process of rubbing or in the process of friction, we have potentially done. So if this is the comb, imagine this is the comb that you have, okay? Now if you are rubbing it with hair, you have charged it or given it an excess of electrons. So it is negatively charged. The comb is negatively charged because these charges have jumped onto the comb from your hair. Now, when you take it close to any metal surface, or when you take it close to, let's take a paper. So you have a paper, you break it into tiny pieces, okay? The paper obviously have equal number of positive, negative, positive, negative, positive, negative charges. So what is the total charge on the paper? The net charge or the total charge on this is neutral, is 0. So it is electrically neutral, right? Why is it electrically neutral? Because number of positively charged particles is equal to number of negatively charged particles. They are equal in number. The forces cancel each other. As a result, you see the net charge on the system, which is the paper here, is 0. So what do? You break it into small pieces, right? Very tiny pieces. Let's break it into very tiny pieces. So you see that when you bring these tiny pieces of paper close to the comb, if it is here, they tend to attract each other, and some of them even come and get stuck to the comb, right? So this you must have tried, you must have seen this happening. But what is really happening? The paper which had net charge 0, how did that get attracted to a comb which has excess of electrons or heavily charged electrons? So what did really happen at an atomic level? Can you think of it for a minute? And as usual, I'm going to pause for a while and then I'll reveal you the answer. I hope you thought it in the right way, because in the beginning of the class I told you we are only talking about, we are building all these or we are discovering all this, or we are building all this field of electrostatics basically on the fundamentals of like charge repulsion and unlike charge attraction. So here also we are going to use the same fundamental properties and understand why the pieces of paper did get attracted to a comb which was negatively charged, which had an excess of electrons. So what is really happening? So as you know, paper is definitely made up of atoms. So how does an atom look like? Let's write one single atom in the piece of paper. So this is the paper that you initially had, or a piece of paper. This paper is enlarged. I will write an enlarged image. So enlarged image of the piece of paper. How does this look like? So basically there is an atom, there is another atom, they are all packed, right? There are atoms here and there is a nucleus in the center which is having a positive charge, right? There is a positively charged heavy nucleus in all of these atoms and a negatively charged electron revolving in circles or revolving in spheres around each of this nucleus. Do you agree? So this is the case, right? Now this is what is brought closer to it. So I will enlarge each of this atom. So this is the atom. The atom, imagine, this is the atom where, this is the spherical shape where a cloud of electron is revolving. This is a cloud of electron revolving around in particular direction. So this is a heavy ball of nucleus which is loaded with protons, heavily positively charged. Now, when you bring a negative charge from the comb towards this, right? So what happens? This positively charged heavy ball is experiencing a force of attraction. It feels there is some force that is attracting, whereas the electron, the light cloud of electron which was revolving around the spherical shape around the nucleus feels a force of repulsion because it sees there is something similar to it is brought very closer. So what happens to the shape of this orbit around which the electron was rotating or revolving? So the positively charged nucleus stays. Now what happens to the shape of the orbit? It gets converted almost in the shape of an ellipse, with the electron tending to move away from the nucleus. So this is the negatively charged particles of the Coulomb. Okay, you have heavily negatively charged particles. So what really happens is, this is experiencing a positive force, this is trying to move away. Similarly, same thing happens with all the protons and the electrons. The heavily charged, the orbit gets distorted. The shape of the orbit, which was in a spherical shape, gets distorted from a circle or a sphere to an ellipse. So it starts revolving in the shape of an ellipse, creating a distance of separation, a larger distance of separation between the electron and the proton, or the positively charged particle and the negatively charged particle. This combination of a proton and the electron, or a positively charged particle and a negatively charged particle separated by a distance, is what we refer to as dipole. It acts something dipole, which means each one has a different pole, just like the North Pole and the South Pole. They are separated by a certain distance because the attractive force was large and also the repulsive force was even larger. So they tend to move away, which in turn literally, there is a little distortion. I am enlarging this and writing. It will be very, 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 very minimal. But then there will be there on a microscopic level. Yes, there is going to be a distortion of the shape. So this is what happens. The positively charged particles are here. They are again experiencing repulsion. So this is what happens, and that is why you see these tiny pieces of paper try to get attracted, but the electrons want to jump out of there because they are feeling that repulsion. They want to get out of that, paper and come out into the air, but which is not possible because air is a bad conductor, air is an insulator, so they have to stay. But what they do, they go to the almost to the rear end of the paper, the orbit gets really distorted, and the positively charged particles come and align at a particular space on to the paper, so that they get attracted to the Coulomb, which is heavily negatively charged. Isn't this really fascinating and fantastic? Just by using the basic and very basic fundamental laws of electrostatics, like charge repulsion and unlike charge attraction, you are able to decode how this happens. Have you, I think if you've never wondered, you should explore more, think on the same thing, what really happens. Same thing happens with the balloon. The balloon also acquires a negative charge. Same thing happens when it goes, attracts to the walls. The wall, you bring it to the wall. The wall is also made up of atoms and nuclei, and also it is made up of electrons revolving around its orbit in circular shape. So same thing happens to the atom, that also gets distorted. The shape of the orbit gets distorted in the form of an ellipse, and you see the positively charged particles tend to attract for a moment. That's why the balloon goes and sticks to the wall. These are very fundamental things. These might feel really silly, but yes, these play a very huge role, especially when you're solving numericals. There is a point I'm stressing on it, because when we pick up numericals, you'll know that other than just knowing the mathematics, other than just knowing which angle does the resultant make, these play a very real part, especially when you're answering quantitative questions and understanding questions based on the fundamentals. Okay, I hope this part is clear. Now let's talk about charging by conduction. Okay, so now it's time to learn about charging by conduction. Unlike induction and unlike friction, charging by conduction is really simple, and of course it follows the fundamental laws of like charges repelling each other and unlike charges attracting each other. So what really happens? We are speaking about a conductor, right? When I say a conductor, we are speaking about a metal which is really good in conducting electricity, right? So when I say it is a very good conductor, obviously it will have loosely bound electrons. Electrons are moving really freely because a conductor allows the easy passage of electrons. They are wanting to jump, or they are wanting to accept more electrons. So imagine you have a metal rod which is negatively charged. You can charge it either by friction or by induction. However, we have already learnt about that. If you want to learn really still more, please go back, pause, go back, play back, see it, watch the previous video where I have discussed in detail about charging by induction. These are really crucial. It is essential to understand. So imagine you have negatively charged rod and you have a metal sphere. Okay, this is a conductor. Imagine this is a conductor, metal conductor. A metal conductor has what? Very freely moving electrons or loosely bound electrons. So point number 1, when I say a metal on the conductor, you should know it has loosely bound electrons. Electrons are free to move, right? Free to move. Electrons are very free to move in a conductor. So electrons, there are atoms here and all the atoms are tightly packed, that you should know in a conductor. And in all these atoms, what is happening at an atomic level? There is a heavy nucleus cloud loaded with positively charged particles. So these are the atoms with the nuclei, and the nuclei heavily charged protons or the positively charged particles, right? And what is happening on the orbital level? There are electrons, free electrons, free electrons, free electrons. Not only one, there could be more than two free electrons, two free electrons. So there could be number of free electrons revolving. So now what do you do when you want to charge an object by conduction, by the method of conduction, right? You are trying to charge it by the method of conduction. So when you say you are conducting, which means you have to bring them in contact. So you have to literally either attach a wire to attach a metal wire, so these electrons easily flow onto this, or bring this in direct contact. You bring the metal in direct contact. So these free electrons jump on, and you see there is an extra addition of electrons everywhere. There are 3 freely moving electrons. So potentially you have added extra number of electrons on the metal which already had loosely bound electrons. So such charging is known as charging by the method of conduction. So this you have potentially charged to negatively charged conductor, from nothing to negatively charged conductor. So that is how you charge. This is again, why does this happen? Because the electrons are potentially attracted by the positively charged, heavily charged nucleus, and the other electrons are trying to move away. There also the shape gets distorted, just like what happened in the previous case. So but then you see you have literally added, because they were in contact, and there is a free movement of electrons. So the electrons get added, the other electrons, they also go get separated, the heavy nucleus also gets separated, again they form a dipole. So there will be again like this electrons. Earlier there were some 2 electrons revolving. If there are 2 orbits, now there is 1 more electron revolving somewhere. So all of them are repelling, they also want to go. If you connect a wire to the earth, all of these electrons move down to the earth, or from the earth electrons move down to this. So vice versa, wherever there is an excess, earth has an excess of electrons, so obviously there will be, you see repulsion and all these things happening. So you potentially charge it to negatively charged conductor. So these fundamentals again I stress upon. You will understand why when I when I talk, especially you remember when the moment I started Coulomb's law, I have been stressing upon the points of, you should know where the force is pointing. The direction is really important. It really matters when you are solving numericals. It also matters that you have to always ensure that if you are applying Coulomb's law, you should see whether you are talking about point charges or you are talking about a number of charges, like just like the one we spoke about in yesterday's class when we were talking about charging by induction. And also see that whether it is following the rule that like charges should repel and unlike charges should attract. Now it is time that we try and understand how do charges behave, which is where if there is a distribution of charges along various kinds of surfaces. So it is now time to understand the distribution of charges. Now here I am taking a specific case. I am taking a uniform long thin metal wire. So when I say uniform, it has uniform area. The thickness is uniform. It is evenly thicked everywhere for all ideal cases. So imagine it is a long thin wire that you have taken, okay, of a particular thickness. Now, right? Now you have, by let's say, with the help of friction or with the help of induction that we have studied in the previous classes, even in today's class, you see this wire has been negatively charged. So you are transferring some electrons. So you have transferred some electrons by method of induction, let's say, or by the method of conduction. Okay. Now since I have already told you that this is a metal wire. A metal wire already has an excess of electron. Now, so therefore, what happens again? This will have this metal wire will have atoms everywhere, right? So atoms, what will happen? The orbit gets distorted, right? The electrons tend to move far away, and you are giving more electrons. So where should these electrons go? There is a repulsion against. Already the electrons are trying to repel away, and you see the positively charged particles are trying to attract. So let's say you are successful in giving excess negatively charged particles. So how will these charges distribute? They can't, they have to repel away from each other. This is repelling another electron, this is repelling another electron, this is repelling another electron, right? So they start repelling each other away. Now this is repelling another one. So this electron wants to literally go out in space, which is not possible because it is surrounded by air. Air is an insulator, right? So it can't potentially go down unless otherwise this wire is infinitely long. So they literally want to go away from each other. So there is repulsive force. What is the force acting here? Repulsive force against the electrons, and these electrons are trying to push each other away. Now in such a process, finally they align or redistribute. So what happens when you do that? The electrons redistribute at equal distances along the length of the rod. They redistribute at equal distances where along the length of the rod, right? Along the length of the wire or the rod, right? So they start redistributing. This is the scenario that happens. So imagine if it was an infinitely long wire, like if it started in this city and you stretched it all the way along to London, Shimla or any other city, you see literally these electrons will go farther and farther away because the repulsive force is really so strong. See, understand the fundamentals. That is why I've been stressing that these properties are really important. So infinitely, if the wire was infinitely long, if it would never end, they would just start drifting away from each other till they don't feel any force of attraction, and the shape gets really distorted. There will be millions of electrons. I'm just drawing 5 or 6, but imagine there will be millions and millions and millions of electrons, and this is what happens. They literally want to go away from each other. So what really happens you have a power supply grid, right? And they charge that and they start leaving those charges. So the electrons start moving and you have power supply lines. See, they are infinitely long. From here you can supply it anywhere. So the electrons, they are drifting away. Why are they moving? Because of that repulsive force. Because of this basic fundamental force, they're repelling away from each other and they want to move away and away and away. Even here they want to go out, but they cannot. So as a result, potentially and ideally, you see an excess of electrons here. You might spot hundreds and thousands of electrons at the edge, whereas if you see in the middle, there could be hundreds of electrons only. Why they are coming and sitting on the edge? Because they have the tendency to go out. They are repelling each other away. But then again, they start rearranging themselves and redistributing themselves along the length of the wire at equal distances, because potentially they cannot escape the wire, but still they are feeling that repulsive force. There is pushing and pulling, only pushing each other is happening. So they have no choice. So what do? The effect cancels each other. You see that they rearrange themselves. Now they coming and sitting at one place is generally referred to as the edge effect, and that is what edge effect. We generally refer to it as the edge effect, where the electrons, they have a tendency to go out, so they come and sit at one particular place at the edges, and you see in the middle of the middle part of the wire the number of electrons is less, but that cannot happen ideally because they start redistributing, because there is equal repulsion among them and they redistribute themselves along the length of the wire. Now here's the interesting part. Now suppose I bring in another charge closer to this. Can I apply Coulomb's law? I bring in a charge here. Can I apply Coulomb's law? So we will do that separately. I hope this part is clear, how and why they redistribute, what really happens. The core is electrons are similar charges. They experience a force of repulsion. As a result, they tend to redistribute themselves along the length of the wire at equal distance only because of the law of electrostatics, where we know that like charges like to repel each other. If the electrons are repelling each other, now using this, we will see if we can apply Coulomb's law. Again, we'll stress on a very important point of Coulomb's law, and we will arrive at an expression for the density of the charges along the length of the wire, which is crucial. Again, I stress it because you will have number of MCQs and numericals coming your way. So always pay attention. Don't just mug up the numericals, or don't just mug up the formulae and see I have to just use this formula. Please understand the reason behind all this happening. So I mean, you really start enjoying numericals as well, and it stops feeling stressful. So now we are discussing whether we can apply Coulomb's law. Now before that, I have a very serious question. This is also a very important question that you might get asked in your entrance examination, and also it is essential that you understand as a part of electrostatics that is it possible that I can place I can place a charge inside of a conductor. For example, let's say let's take the same metal rod. Suppose the metal rod is this thick, and I start drilling a hole here. Okay, and I drill a hole. There is a hole. Now I bring a positive +1 Coulomb charge, and I want to place it inside the metal conductor. Is it possible? This is not possible because again there is air, there is an insulator. You can't place a charge there, right? This is not a possibility. But imagine in some case, if you are able to, in this metal rod, if you place 1 Coulomb charge, if you are successful in placing 1 Coulomb charge +1 Coulomb charge inside of a conductor, okay, what will happen? Does that mean were you successful in charging the conductor by just bringing a charge and placing it inside? What will happen? We have already read this. So of course, since this is a heavy charge and it is positively charged, there are atoms surrounding it. So what will happen? There is distortion. Again, the negative electrons, so again there will be distortion. Electrons will tend to attract each other from all sides, with the heavy nucleus going on the other side, and you see that these electrons attract +1 Coulomb. So +1 Coulomb is attracted by electrons, all these electrons, and the net charge will be 0. So the total charge on that +1 Coulomb is 0. So initially it was electrically neutral. There were equal number of positively charged particles and equal number of negatively charged particles. Now you are trying to charge a metal rod by bringing in +1 Coulomb charge, and imagine if you are successful to place the charge inside of the conductor, then what will happen on an atomic level? Obviously all the electrons in the atoms orbiting the nucleus are experiencing a attractive pull. So they all come together and these forces cancel each other. So therefore the total net charge on the conductor still remains 0, because of again the basic and very basic fundamental law that unlike charges attract each other. So imagine, so that's what happens. So what happens? They cancel each other and the positively charged particles go align on the surface. So if you see all the we always say the charges reside only on the outer surface of the conductor. They cannot reside inside. This is the reason, because if you keep it inside, if you are successful, the electrons, if you keep -1 Coulomb, all the positively charged particles cancel the effect. If you keep +1 Coulomb inside of a conductor, all the electrons will cancel this effect of the charge, and other charges, they start repelling away. So the positive charges start repelling away. They all get redistributed just like this on the uniform surface, on the outer surface, and that is why we see always charges reside on the outer surface of the conductor. Inside nothing can remain, because the effect, even if it is there, all the other electrons or the protons surrounding it cancel the effect, and the net charge will be 0, and the other charges come and reside on the outer surface of the conductor. How beautiful it is all, right? Understanding this whole field of electrostatics lies in only understanding the basic laws like repulsion and attraction. if you understand that really well, you can really rock electrostatics, and you really enjoy solving numericals, which we will certainly do when we are solving it, because I enjoy solving these numericals, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it with me. Okay, let's get back to the main topic of applying Coulomb's law. I hope you understood this part. This part was clear. I'll take up this part. Yes, and now it's time to apply Coulomb's law. Imagine I keep another charge. So can I find the force between these charges? How can I find? Do I have a point charge here? No, there is a distribution of charge. And remember, what did we tell in the previous session? When there is a distribution of charge and when there is a point charge, you cannot apply Coulomb's law. Coulomb's law is valid only for point charges, right? Do we have a point charge here? Yes, we have one point charge, which is Q, but we do not have a point charge here because there is an array of charges. So what do? We are going to divide this entire length of the conductor into small tiny pieces. Let's say I take we will divide into equal length. I'm just showing you this, but then literally you do infinitesimal number of pieces, very tiny microscopic pieces. Such thus I choose only 1 meter length, a unit length, or 1 centimeter length. So you might have 2 point charges, or you chop it into such tiny portions that you get only single charge. So this could be 1 meter. Now this can be treated as a point charge Q, and this Q1 and Q2, now they are separated by some distance. So there are potentially 2 point charges along per unit length, right? Charge per unit length, right, is, then you can apply your Coulomb's law, right? So piece it into small pieces. Imagine it is being sliced into very tiny pieces. As such, you find only literally 1 point charge, right? So then you can apply Coulomb's law. Now since you are slicing it into small lengths, we define a term called charge density. So what is linear? Since it is linear, since the thickness was minimum, it was just a metal string, we define something called linear charge density. Let's define it. I'll erase this and then we can start defining it. So I erase most of the parts so that there is no confusion. Now that you have divided it into infinitesimal of pieces and a lot of pieces, and then you see, you can potentially get a point charge. Now you can apply Coulomb's law for point charges. I can't apply it for the entire length. So we define a term called linear charge density because the linear is the length, it is, the thickness is almost minimum. So linear charge density is how they have been distributed. It is denoted by the letter lambda. This is lambda, okay? Lambda is given by charge per unit length. So this is the charge per unit length. So you take 1 centimeter, 1 meter, whatever it is. So charge per unit length of the wire is what is referred to as the linear charge density. Here, since we have chopped it into very small pieces, I will call this length as dl. dl in the sense it is tiny, very small, so that you cannot see it from your naked eye, right? So therefore, what will Q be from this expression? You cross multiply, the charge will be equal to lambda into dl. So Q1 here, if I call this as Q1, so Q1, your Q1 will be lambda into dl. So what will be the electric field? Electric field is given by 1 by dE is given by, what is the formula for electric field? We learnt it already. 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into the source charge, that is Q, divided by, this becomes your source charge and this is experiencing the field due to it. So Q divided by R square. Now what is Q? Q we will rewrite it as dE is equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught. Q can be written as sigma dl, sigma into dl divided by R square. So this is the expression for the electric field, the tiny electric field produced by this charge, and this point charge experiences this. Now there are other point charges which are at distances r1, r2, r3, r4. So it experiences force due to all of this. Now how do we find such forces? We have to apply this law for every small and then integrate it. So since we do not know, you do not want to find out DE1, DE2, DE3, DE4. So your DE net will be potentially DE1 plus DE2 plus etc. into DEN. So instead of doing all this, integration mathematics provides a very easy way of adding this, and which we say by the method of integration. So you do integral DE is equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into integral Q into DL, or sorry, it was sigma into DL. Sigma is constant. Sigma into DL divided by R square. Now this integration, if you take out, you see whichever is the variable quantity, you integrate it among that. So 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught, lambda comes out because lambda is a constant, into DL divided by R square. So now you use the integration symbol. We will do numericals on this as well. If you have already learned integration in mathematics, it's well and good. So mathematics provides us the formula to do it instead of we calculating each and every force. That is a very laborious process. If there are thousands of electrons and you have to calculate due to each point charge the field, then you will have to do the calculation 1000 times. Instead of doing that, integration provides you a easy formula to do that by applying limits, and it has got suggested formulas. We could just use mathematics as a tool and find out that easily. I hope this part is very clear. We'll take the other two charge densities, which we call the areal charge density. The other one is the volume charge density. So now it's time to discuss areal charge density and volume charge density. Just like apply the same case to a specific area, unit area and a unit volume. So what we are going to do, instead of a thin long wire, we are going to take a surface area. Imagine this is the surface area we pick. So there are electrons, protons everywhere, right? So it has got electrons and protons, right? It is tightly packed with nuclei, electrons and protons. Now, how do you calculate, again here, how do you calculate the electric field due to this, right? How do you do that? There are plenty of electrons. You have already charged this, just like that. You have given it excess, negative charge or something. Now, how do you calculate? This is having its own electric field because there is an excess of electrons that you have transferred. It is not electrically neutral. So when you bring in a test charge, there are number of source charges that contribute their own field, right? And the combination of this field is felt as a force by the test charge. So in order to find that, again, what do? We slice it into infinitesimally small areas everywhere. So there are infinitesimally small areas. Literally you slice it into small areas that are not visible to your naked eye. And here I am choosing one. So there could be one charge here. So we calculate this distance, or similarly there will be various distances that you might need to calculate with everywhere, all unit area. So this is the unit area that you are considering. Let me write it here, unit area. So we consider charge per unit area and we call this as areal density, which is denoted by the letter sigma. So sigma is charge per unit area instead of unit length. So charge per unit area, that is charge per unit area. It could be 1 meter square or 1 centimeter square. Could be any SI unit. So sigma is Q into A. Instead of A, we write it as dA because you have literally sliced into infinitesimally small. When I say infinitesimally small, it is really small that you can't even see it from your naked eye. So therefore, the charge here, which is producing the source charge, which is producing the field, has the value sigma into dA. So how do you calculate the electric field? Electric field formula is dE due to this is 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught and Q divided by R square. So this can be rewritten as 1 divided by 4 pi epsilon naught Q is sigma into dA, so sigma dA divided by R square. Now if you apply integration, instead of adding dE1, dE2, dE3 up to dEn, we just use the formula for integration. So E will be equal to integral of 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught sigma into dA divided by R square. Since sigma is a constant, this also I have already taken out of the integral sign because I have done it in the previous derivation, where I explained to you sigma will be taken out, so it will be dA divided by R square. You know the formula, you will know the limits. You apply the limits for a quantity that is varying. This will be unit area anyway, so this will be from a particular distance, from 0 to some distance. You integrate, use the integral formula, where mathematics helps as a very successful tool in simplifying this numerical, and you find out the electric field due to distribution of charges. And we were successfully able to apply the laws of physics. We knew that if you chop it into infinitesimally small pieces, you could treat that charge not as a distribution of charge, but a point charge at that. There could be one or two or could be more, but you could still treat them as a point charge because you are taking into account the charge density also, the number of charges in that unit area, and you are able to treat that as a source charge and calculate the electric field due to that charge, and calculate the electric force experienced by the charge. You can even use find out force. There will be numericals where you come across all this. It is essential to understand the fundamentals so you can solve it easily. It's time to speak about the volume charge density now. When I say volume charge density, we, instead of a unit area or a unit length, here we are going to talk about unit volume. So we need to consider a surface which has a particular volume or occupies volume. So for all ideal purposes, we take a spherical surface. Obviously, you have charged it with excess of electrons. You have transferred excess of electrons. So you chop it into equal number of unit volumes, right? So when I say unit volume, it will be like you literally take a unit volume like this inside of a sphere. So there are plenty of unit volumes, infinitesimally chopped unit volumes, and you try to call here a point charge, source charge is existing. So another charge sitting here, you calculate the force or the electric field between them. So what do? We define something called volume charge density, and volume charge density is denoted by the letter rho. Okay, so this is rho. Volume charge density is Q divided by unit volume. Unit volume is dV because it is chopped into infinitesimally small volumes. So therefore Q will be equal to rho into dV. Now assuming this to be a point charge, because it has been sliced infinitesimally small, we can calculate the electric field, which is 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught to Q by R square. So substituting for Q, you get 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught rho into dV divided by R square. Now to find the total electric field, we integrate on either side, where this turns out to be the total electric field. An integral of 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught is a constant. You take it out of the integral sign because the constant cannot be integrated. So rho into dV divided by R square. Rho will be a constant. So rho is taken out, 4 pi epsilon naught into dV divided by R square. So for a spherical surface, dV will be 4 by 3 pi R cube, right? So you can use that also, and when doing numericals, this is just a suggestion I told you. So if you know the volume, you can use the volume, whatever surface it is. If it is not, then another thing adds up. You have to figure out the volume of that surface. Also find out the volume and then use the formula, use the values, and then find the net electric field due to a lot of other unit volumes. So there will be a lot of other unit volumes, right? Because we have literally changed, and all of them do contribute to the electric field. So we are figuring out the net electric field using a mathematical tool called integration. How fascinating all this is. Just by using the basic laws like point charges, we were able to extend the Coulomb's law. Although there were no point charges here, But with the use of mathematics, where we knew it could be chopped into infinitesimally small pieces, and we can treat each charge as a point charge. Distribution can be treated as a point charge by using a mathematical funda or a physics funda, where you chop them into infinitesimally small pieces, treating them as point charges, and then applying the formula for integration to finding the total electric field experienced by the test charge due to each source charge. Point charge is what it is all about. We use the laws, very simple laws, like how to extend the same concept of point charges to here. We took the mathematics help, and also we used the basic laws like repulsion and attraction to understand the basis of electrostatics. So this is very crucial. Please pay attention. Don't you might not get enough questions for your board exam, but understanding this thoroughly will pave a greater path for you tomorrow, because physics forms the fundamentals of most of the things. You might need all this, the logic behind everything. So it is essential to understand the fundamentals. So see you in my next class, where we are going to talk about dipole. We'll extend the same concept that we learned again with the fundamental laws like repulsion and attraction, and we try to understand how a dipole behaves. There are lots of dipoles existing around you, and it is essential to understand how they behave in electric field, outside of the electric field, or when kept in an electric field. So we'll do all those derivations. We'll talk about electric potential and a lot more in the coming classes. Till you then, take care. If you take care of physics, physics will always take care of you. Thank you.